Continuing our reading in The World and Thorinn by Damon Knight, today is Chapter 6, Section 3. Thornton closed the door. He was in a room, about the size of the platform outside. The ceiling was broken, dust and rubble covered the floor. He examined some of the metal devices that stood here and there, but could make nothing of them. One or two were like melded chairs. They would be ill to sit in, and he could imagine no other use for them. The damage was worst at the far end of the chamber. Here the walls were blackened and a great hole gaped in the ceiling. Tongues of corroded metal hung down. Broken stones were piled high in a corner. A faint breath came from the opening above. Thornton climbed the slope, peered upward past the beam of his light. The way was partially blocked at the opening by fallen slabs of stone. Beyond, it seemed to be clear. He tested the slabs cautiously, then began to wiggle past them. The passage widened perceptibly as he went on, until he was able to crawl on hands and knees. It sloped gradually upward, twisting and turning. After 100 ells or so, it turned sharply to the right and forked into two ascending passages, both deep and narrow. The breath of air from the right-hand passage seemed to be a little stronger than the other, and he chose that one. For a while the passage was deep enough to let him scramble half erect. Then it twisted and began to grow shallower. In another ell or two he found himself in difficulty. The passage had grown so narrow that he could not get through it with the bundle on his shoulders. He retreated until he could crouch far enough to work the pack free. Pushing it ahead of him, he was able to advance another 10 ells, the passage growing steadily narrower as he went. Then the passage took an abrupt downward turn. He thrust the pack down ahead of him, wiggled after it. It checked, then jammed tight. He tugged to free it, and it came back a finger's breadth or two, then held fast again. It felt as if some loop or projecting fold of the stuff had caught. He probed with his fingers at the end of the bundle, all around. At one point he felt a faint touch of cool air. He squirmed forward, forcing his arms between the bundle and the smooth stone. Halfway down he felt the bulge of the talking box inside. He got a precarious grip and tugged. Sweat ran down into his eyes. He tugged with one hand, pushed with the other. The bundle turned slightly. He braced himself and pushed hard. The bundle ground forward, stopped, moved again, and suddenly dropped out of reach. A freshet of cool air played against his face. The light box, sliding down after the pack, dropped and disappeared. He heard it fall and saw its beam not far below. A squirm and a heave and he was out, falling, twisting slowly to land without a sound. He sat up, bruised and gasping. He was in a level passage, blocked at one end by a fall of stones. In the other direction, it ran off straight into darkness. He had gone no more than 100 ells when he saw the circular opening of a shaft in the ceiling. He bent his knee slightly, leaped into the shaft, twisting to brace himself with one foot and elbow. As he had thought, the shaft was closed by a shield of brown metal, but there was no opening in it, and it would not turn. He pushed against it and thought he felt it give a little. He braced himself more firmly, pushed again. The shield gave way, and as if hinged on one side, dim light washed down into the shaft, and he smelled fresh air. He lunged upward, pulled himself through, and sprawled in a tangle of stiff brown canes. The shield clapped shut behind him. Leaf shadows trembled on his face, and he smelled the scent of green trees. And that's the end of chapter 6.